I wish we could have gotten him for longer because I think personally he'd be a great motivational speaker. But I've been asked to introduce George Marcello, who's here with us today, and to tell a little bit about him before he then talks about why he's here, and has a couple of students. Actually, Aaron and Taylor Doucette this morning will be running a torch from here down Pleasant Street and upstairs road to Jungle Gyms to represent and hopefully promote what we're here for today. We're here for what's called Step by Step and how it all began. Step by Step has been leading the country when it comes to promote organ and tissue donation. And that's why we're here. We're here to hear about how important that is. They're proud to celebrate their 10th anniversary. They have successfully completed 4 huge campaigns throughout Canada and one in Europe. George Marcello. George was born into a hard-working Italian immigrant family on July 27th in 1955 in Toronto. Growing up, he had a great passion for a lot of activities and sports and being involved in his local community, especially sports and recreation. However, as a child, he was plagued by some illnesses, chronic asthma, rheumatic fever, and he actually contracted hepatitis C as a 15-year-old. And some of this prevented him, I think, from reaching his full potential as an athlete. As a teenager, he struggled and battled with substance abuse. And as we all know, that's a huge demon in today's society. And his addiction unfortunately led him to jails and institutions. But on September 11th, in '86, so 21 years ago, by the grace of God, he left that life behind. And this major transformation in his life formulated his vision to teach all people how to achieve a healthier and holistic lifestyle. In the next 10 years, George and some of his childhood friends created and developed programs that help literally thousands of people overcome addictions. George's persistence and integrity has also led him to roles in the community. He's had such roles as outreach worker, coordinator, counselor, recreational manager, and visionary. And he went on to become a fitness promoter, and he founded the present charity Step by Step. George's story. 1992 is sort of the beginning. George discovered that he had liver disease, and he was given probably 2 years to live in '92. And in '94, he was on the waiting list for a liver transplant, but there weren't any livers. 2 days before what they had told him was his 2-year limit, he had an emergency phone call to report to the Toronto General and that there was a liver available for him to have a transplant. This was fortunate for him, but of course this was because there had been a tragic accident somewhere else in Canada where family and friends had lost somebody very dear to them. However, as a result of this, and as a result of his family being willing to have the organs donated, George received a liver transplant, and I believe 5 other people received transplants from that one individual that was tragically killed. About 2 weeks after he had his transplant, he was out of the hospital and back getting fit and realizing what he wanted to do. He was in the gym, he was training, and he kept asking himself every day, how is it that I'm still alive? How is it that I'm so lucky that I'm still alive? And he wanted to passionately show how thankful he was, and he wondered how he could show his family how grateful he was to have this organ transplant and still be alive. I think it's difficult for us, most of us at least, to kind of put yourself in those shoes, but imagine how powerful that must have been, those feelings. What was he supposed to do? Well, in 1996, he had what he called the vision. During a North American convention in Montreal, he experienced a fantastic vision. In this vision, he saw himself building a great event that would inspire many people. And he told some of his friends about it. And they thought he was a little bit crazy, but they sort of felt that maybe there was something great ahead. And at this time, he thought his mission was to address substance abuse and to try and eliminate this demon from society. But after listening to Whitney Houston, she had a song at the time, it's called Step by Step. he immediately started working on building this journey. Little did he know where it would lead, and that was the beginning of Step by Step. In 1997, so 10 years ago, our founder, liver recipient, George Marcello, who is here with us today, walked from Toronto to Ottawa. George walked around the province 2 years later in 1999 and inspired the premier of that province to allocate $120 million towards this issue, towards organ transplant issue. A year later, in 2000, George walked 12,000 kilometers over 769 days across Canada and inspired the Canadian government to allocate $20 million and inspired an audience with Pope John Paul II to support organ donation. In 2004, under Step by Step, George accompanied 14-year-old Christopher Knowles, who also needed a liver transplant, across a 200-city tour across Canada, stopped in 200 cities, and it was called Christopher's Wish. A year later, in 2005, under Step by Step, George organized a 5-country European tour. These countries actually lead the world in organ and tissue donation, and George met and gathered important information from health officials in these countries. During the end of the tour in France, George unfortunately had thrombosis and realized that he needed another liver transplant. In the middle of that summer in 2005, George was fortunate enough to receive his second liver transplant in Toronto on his 50th birthday. Less than 2 weeks later, he held a press conference at Queen's Park in downtown Toronto and urged the provincial and the Canadian governments to make organ and tissue donation a priority. In 2005-2006, George went on to conduct over a dozen press conferences regarding the opt-out system, donations after cardiac deaths, expense compensations for live donors, and funds for foreign surgeries. In 2006, just about a year ago, George once again walked from Toronto to Ottawa for a mother of 2 people who needed a liver transplant. In total, George completed 15,000 kilometers. In 2007, George is now doing his next campaign, which is a cross-country torch relay for awareness on organ donation. He's going to several towns and communities and cities and getting individuals in those communities that are runners to carry the torch. And he's going to tell you a little bit about that today, so I'd like you to please join me in giving a warm welcome to George Marcello.
Thank you. Everything that Bobby Lou, sorry. I'm thinking of, what was it, the Hillbillies or something, it was about it. But, sorry. All the information that she said about me is on our website because I really believe in like telling the truth. You know, there shouldn't be anything that we've done. If we've made mistakes, you know, we should realize that we made mistakes and then try and move on after that. But if you don't admit the mistakes that you've made, you're going to get stuck in that mistake. So that's why we put out that information on the website to let everybody know, like, exactly where I came from and how my life got transformed, and how we're here today doing what we're doing. And what we're doing today is extremely important. And here's an opportunity right now, because there's close to 700 people here, it looks like. Here's an opportunity right now to do something that can make such an impact throughout Canada. If I can get everybody's attention right now to understand why we're here doing what we're doing, and to understand it, and to try not to forget about it, and then to carry on, we could make a difference in the lives of like thousands of Canadians. And I want to start off by showing you this torch.